Throughout the past several years, there has been a lot of zombie games that have came out, and I'm talking about a lot. However, most of them ironically haven't survived past the huge zombies era of gaming, except for one little zombies game called Left 4 Dead 2. So why is this particular zombies game still very much alive with tens of thousands of active players, even after releasing nearly 15 years ago? I've heard a lot about this game, but I actually haven't played it until recently, so I decided to figure out what made this game so amazing, why is it still one of the top most played games on Steam to this day, and how has it outlived even the most popular zombies games. The first original Left 4 Dead game had released back in November 17th, 2008, with the sequel that everyone knows and loves releasing exactly 1 year later in 2009. Even though people love this game now, that wasn't always the case. The sequel was announced just 7 months after the first game had released, and people were surprised because, as y'all may know, Valve generally does not like making sequels very often. This was also strange considering how soon this game was coming out after the original, so as a result, gamers were furious. There were people who were literally boycotting the game, but this was actually low-key understandable. At the time, it seemed like there was no reason for them to make a whole new game that soon after, and it also seemed like it would probably be very low quality considering how little of a time frame they had to complete it in. Overall, it just looked like it was a quick cash grab to profit off of the success from the first game, but when the game dropped, they proved everyone wrong. While people love the first Left 4 Dead game, many consider the second game to be superior in every way, going as far as to say that Left 4 Dead 2 was one of the best zombies games of all time, and maybe even one of the best games in general of gaming history. So with all that being said, I finally decided to scrape up the last few pennies in my bank account to purchase this game and to give it a try so I could figure out for myself why is this game so great that people still play it to this day. But wait a second, if y'all want to help support a YouTuber in need, feel free to drop a like and sub so we can pass Mr. Beast. Whenever you spawn into a campaign level, you're introduced to your 4 main characters who are also your teammates. You also start out with some loot that y'all can pick up to help y'all start out. After everyone's ready and prepared, you can finally start to head out, and while I played, I quickly came to the conclusion that the main objective of this game is simply using teamwork to make it to the end of the level without dying. In fact, this whole game is actually really simple, but at the same time, it goes pretty deep. Each campaign is usually separated into about 3 to 5 smaller levels, which make up the full thing, and in between them, the goal of each one is to get to the safe room where you can just like replenish your health and ammo and weapons and all that until you go on to the next level. But the catch is that you gotta try to get everyone inside before someone gets left behind, which can lead to some pretty funny moments.
Get inside, 5 seconds! Get inside! What the f- Birdie! No, Birdie! Serious, bro. Oh my god, never mind. Holy f- go.
Throughout these missions, you will encounter a lot of different obstacles and other random things along the way that can be rather interesting. You might find a guitar melee weapon, a chainsaw, or maybe even a gnome perhaps. There's also several different missions and scenarios that you get put in. At the end of the Dark Carnival campaign, you gotta hold out on a concert stage and try to survive while you wait for a chopper with music and fireworks going off in the background, which was pretty crazy experiencing for the first time. In the parish, I was in some like modded 8-player lobby or something where we were like all running across this broken bridge at the end of the game, and it ended up getting blasted. One of the maps even features the cast from the first Left 4 Dead game, where they follow you around and even help give you loot and shoot zombies for you and stuff like that. It's nothing crazy, but I mean, that's a cool little touch, especially for someone who was like into the first game, as well as all the random stuff in the game. There's also a pretty big handful of different zombie types that help mix up the game as well. The boomer projectile vomits at players and can blind you if they explode too close to you. The throat goat will shoot his tongue at you and strangle you to death. The spitter spits acid at you. There's several others, but these are just a few. The tank and the charger are like the big guys in this game, and I cannot count how many times these guys have almost made me shit myself.
Nah, bro, this don't do nothing, bro. This is gonna be super chill. Look, bro, we turned the power on. We're chilling. Holy shit! Holy shit! What the fuck? What the fuck? M14 more, bro. What the fuck are you? That is unrealistic.
And of course, he cannot bring up getting the shit scared out of you without mentioning the witch.
Shadi is sad, bro. Do not start over.
I didn't do that.
So yeah, all that is pretty much the basics of the game and the important stuff in it, but what specifically about this game is so special that it can hit tens of thousands of concurrent players at a time 15 years later. First up, we got map selection. So in this game, every single campaign is presented as if it's its own zombies movie. You can see this by the cover of each map, the end credits, the tagline, and the director, which is a big one, but I'll talk about that soon. But the fact that everything is supposed to be kind of like a movie is like a really cool touch, and I think it adds a lot of character to the game. The game has 6 different campaigns that make up its Dead's main story, but there's also several other DLC maps that they added along the way, with the most recent being in September of 2020, which was actually a community-made DLC that was officially put in the game, even though it was over a decade after launch, which is pretty cool. On top of that, every single map that was in the original Left 4 Dead got thrown into the second game, leading to a grand total of 14 campaign maps to choose from. Each of these play uniquely and have some different quirks and objectives to them, so it's not like you're playing the same thing over and over. Arguably the biggest, most important aspect of the game has got to be its co-op. But 808, what if I have no friends? Well, no worries, because the bot teammates in this game are actually surprisingly good for how old this game is. Unlike most games where bot teammates are actual dog shit, in this game they're actually pretty helpful. They be killing zombies, healing you up, reviving you when you're down. If you do play with other people online or with friends, however, you are going to be getting the premium experience. This whole game and its gameplay is very centered around teamwork, so it does help to have actual people who are strategizing and making high IQ decisions. I feel like it's a known fact that playing games with friends in general just makes the experience 10 times more fun, even if that game is typically boring. The problem with a lot of games that push for teamwork is that most of the time people just ignore that aspect of the game, and they're usually off doing their own thing because who gives a fuck about capturing the objective? Well, yeah, but in Left 4 Dead 2, you quickly realize that that is not an option. In this game, it is crucial to stick together with your team, because if you're not, you will die in about 0.2 seconds, hence the title, Left 4 Dead. There's a lot of specific zombie attacks where if they hit you with them and you don't got a teammate to save you, you are fucked. So while playing games with friends in general can make any experience more enjoyable, the fact that this game is specifically made for co-op teamwork makes the experience incredible. Left 4 Dead 2 has a lot of character to it, which I think definitely makes it stand out compared to most zombies games. And speaking of character, I think a huge part of what contributes to that is the actual characters in this game. Coach is a former high school football coach who kind of guides the rest of the characters and motivates them. Ellis is a mechanic and he's low-key just a cool dude, I'm not gonna lie. Nick is a shady gambler and is kind of the douche of the group. And lastly, you got Rochelle, who was a former amateur news reporter. From what I've seen, she's kind of just another chill character killing zombies and stuff. The storytelling in this game is also pretty interesting because they do it in kind of a unique way. Throughout the whole game, there's like one cinematic, which is literally the intro cutscene every time you load up the game. It sets the tone and I like how it introduces you to everything. And then outside of that, you have the little in-game cutscenes whenever you load into a map and beat it. What's unique though is that there is a story, but a lot of it is told while you experience the game through the different campaigns, missions, character conversations, writing on the walls, and other Easter eggs throughout the map. I like that a lot because it kind of makes you piece everything together yourself. It also reminds me kind of like Call of Duty Zombies in a way, where there isn't an obvious storyline the first time you play, but you learn what's happening through little subtle details and Easter eggs, which is a really cool way to storytell in my opinion. So another thing that's interesting and definitely makes the game stand out is that it's one of the last games today that both has an active player base and still doesn't follow modern gaming practices. What I mean by this is things like battle passes, item shops, loot boxes, and just stuff like that, which you literally cannot avoid if you're playing any kind of modern game. Thank you, Fortnite. Sometimes all the modern gaming stuff does get a little annoying and tiring. I mean, look what happened with Call of Duty. I think people just get tired of all that stuff, so it's refreshing knowing that there's a game out there that doesn't rely on all those shady practices. And I think a lot of people gravitate and respect the game because of that. You pay for the game and you get access to everything, which is honestly how all games should be in most cases. So yeah, on top of the reasons that people like the game in general, there's a lot of other specific reasons that contribute to this game's success after all these years. First of all, a lot of Left 4 Dead 2's current success comes down to the game's amazing replayability. Almost all games nowadays have some sort of leveling system where the more you play, the higher your level gets. In this game, however, the progression is almost completely different. Instead of leveling up or artificial grinds like a lot of games need to keep players engaged, this game's progression and replayability is purely based on 1, the fun of the game, and 2, the skills and knowledge that you gain over the years while playing it. I think a lot of games nowadays overcomplicate their games with all these random mechanics, unlocks, blueprints, upgrades, quests, and whatever else it is. But part of what makes Left 4 Dead's progression so great is its simplicity. I mean, me personally, I feel like it gets so overwhelming when I'm playing a game and they consistently add new shit and mechanics for no fucking reason. It just feels like a cheap way to keep players engaged rather than making the core experience and the gameplay fun. In Left 4 Dead, instead of artificially progressing, you have to actually learn strategies and little tips to help you improve.
I saw a tip and trick. You do this.
There's no way, bro.
It works. It works every time. That shit did not work. That shit did not work.
But even besides that, the core gameplay itself is just simply fun and doesn't need all this extra stuff to keep you playing like a lot of modern games do. And this isn't to say that it's not good for modern games to have detailed progression systems, but I think it becomes a problem when your whole game's experience relies on that. Even besides skill progression though, there's still so many things that you can do and complete. There's several maps you can beat. You can complete those maps on different difficulties, and there's like a million modes that you can try to complete as well. And on top of all that, you can still go through and complete all the achievements, which most people don't even get close to completing. Speaking of different modes, like I said, there's so many different ones that you can choose from, with some of them completely changing how the game works and how it's played. In survival mode, the main objective is to hold out in a certain area for as long as you can. Versus is the game's competitive mode with 2 teams of survivors versus the infected. Scavenge is another competitive mode where you have a limited time frame to find gas cans and fill up a generator or a car while surviving against the infected team, similar to the versus mode. Versus is actually one of the biggest parts of the game that people play now, and acts as this game's competitive multiplayer mode. While the regular campaigns can be fun to play, if you're looking for some crazy MLG 200 IQ strategic plays, then this mode is for you. In this mode, you have 8 players, with 4 players being on the survivor team and 4 being on the infected team. Every round, the team switches sides, and the goal is to see who can get the most points as a survivor by the end of the match. As a survivor, the amount of points you earn is calculated by the amount of health each player has, as well as how far your team made it through the map. And then as one of the infected, you gotta try to stop the survivors from making progress until you switch sides. It gets a little bit more complicated, but that's the basics of how it works. But as far as the gameplay itself, it has so much more depth that it legit could be a full-on esport. Now look, I am probably the least qualified person to be speaking on this. I am both ass at video games and I just started playing this game. However, I am determined to become the GOAT of this game mode, so maybe I'll check back in with y'all on my Discord server. I do understand though that people do be doing some crazy things in this game mode, and there's a lot of different strategies and different plays that you can make if you're really good at it. In general though, this game 100% helps with the game's replayability because it mixes it up and gives people more to do other than the campaign missions, and it also gives people more to learn and improve at, especially if you're more competitive. Now what if I told you that there was some mysterious being watching over every single move that you make and secretly controls everything that happens in the game? Well, that would be the director. So what the director in this game does is he is basically responsible for randomizing everything that happens when you play a level. When you walk around, the loot will spawn in random locations every game and will adjust based off what you might be needing. If it looks like you're breezing through the levels and chilling, the director might spawn a big ass horde on you.
Oh my, what the fuck?
Or maybe if it's getting a little too difficult, he might tone it back a little bit. Something else that I realized he could do is that he can actually change stuff about the map. Like he can go in and block off different paths. It'll add fences and vehicles and stuff. He can even change the weather, I'm pretty sure, which is pretty awesome. The whole point of the director is basically to balance the game's difficulty and pacing, and just to mix it up in general, which single-handedly adds so much replay value to the game. You can play the same campaign mission multiple times and have completely different experiences each time. I mean, imagine if all the items, zombie spawns, and paths you take were all the exact same every game. I would probably be snoozing before I can make it to the first safe room. Now, one thing about this game is that it's one of the only zombies games out there with an active online community where you can join in a public lobby and actually find a match easily. Even in Call of Duty Zombies, which is super popular, sometimes it gets pretty difficult to find public lobbies in the older games, especially on the DLC maps. In this game though, you can either load up an official match or you can load up the custom server list and you'll be able to instantly find lobbies to join in. The fact that online play is this active for a zombies game in the year 2024 is pretty crazy in itself, and I think it definitely drives people to this game because after all these years, you don't have too many options if you want to play a zombies game with random people online. So a huge aspect that I haven't even touched on yet is the modding in this game. On top of all the default content in the game, it's got its own modding community and Steam Workshop page, which literally gives you infinite replayability. If all those campaigns and game modes weren't enough, you can just go to the Steam Workshop and download an entire new campaign with a click of a button. If you want to spice up your game, then you can turn it into Minecraft, or maybe you want a cat gun perhaps. The mods in this game are endless and there's so much stuff and maps to play around with, on top of the already huge amount of base content in the game. What's cool about this game also is that to this day, Left 4 Dead 2 is still being supported by developers. Now yeah, most of the updates are just bug fixes or minor tweaks, but it's still cool to see that they're actively supporting the game after all these years later. The last major update to come out was the Last Stand update made by the community, which came out a little bit ago, and I'm pretty sure it caused the game to reach over 100,000 concurrent players on Steam, which is actually insane. But who knows, maybe this game will receive another campaign at some point. It's not only the game itself keeping Left 4 Dead 2 alive, however. A huge part of what makes it so lively and active to this day is the community and the content creation aspect of the game. If you go to YouTube, there's actually so many creators, even small YouTubers, who are pulling off hundreds of thousands of views from this game, which is wild, and it definitely shows that there's still so much interest for this game that's nearly 15 years old. I couldn't really tell you how toxic the community is because in my experience, most people have been pretty cool and teaching me stuff. I mean, one time I did get kicked out of a game on my first time playing Versus, but I mean, I probably deserve that, I'm not gonna lie.
Oh my fucking god.
From what I've seen though, a lot of people do say that the community is toxic, but I mean, I'm not too sure about that. Maybe it's more so the competitive part of it. I do see this game a ton on TikTok also, and I mean, some of the clips are pretty interesting.
Que lo que, bro, te habla Mr. B.
You might be asking yourself, if this game was so amazing, why didn't it get a sequel? Back 4 Blood. Back 4 Blood was kind of a weird game because it was made by the main group of devs who made Left 4 Dead 2, and it was built as if it was directly related to the game, even with the titling, but it wasn't actually connected to the original series at all. And you would expect it to be a great game because it had the same developers, but in reality it turned out to be very mediocre. What's funny is I've actually played this game when it came out, before I've ever even touched Left 4 Dead. The game wasn't considered terrible by everyone, but even though it was brand new and a modernized version of Left 4 Dead, it wasn't good enough to keep people playing, and ultimately everyone went back to Left 4 Dead, which shows how ahead of time that game was all those years ago. Don't get me wrong, there is several amazing zombie games that are very well known and even considered classics, but Left 4 Dead 2 happened to outsurvive all these zombies games, no pun intended, because it really nailed almost every aspect of the game, from the gameplay, replayability, characters, modding, and multiplayer, while still making it age amazingly, which not a lot of games are able to accomplish, especially without frequently dropping huge updates and completely changing the game throughout the years, like you see with a lot of old games that are still popular. Sure, maybe the game could benefit from having some new updates and features, or maybe even more emphasis on the story or something, but for how long ago the game came out, the impact that this game had was wild, and I'm definitely glad I started playing this game. But yeah, let me know what y'all think about this game and what makes a video game age well down in the comments. We're on the road to 100k, so if y'all want to drop a sub and be early on that, that would be fire. But yeah, peace.